Chapter 13. The Coup. Henry and Navara were the only ones who went upstairs with Lady Wachter. "Please be careful," said the noblewoman, stopping at a bedroom door. "I will stay outside. Stella always gets upset any time I go in." She slipped a key into the knob and unlocked the door. The room was dark and musty. It smelled of urine and human filth. An iron-framed bed, fitted with leather straps, stood near the far wall. It was the only furnishing in the room. Hidden in the shadows, a human figure scuttled away from the door and behind the bed. "Stella Wachter?" Henry asked, stepping into the room. "My name is Henry. I'm here with my friend Navara. We're here to help you." Step by step, Henry and Navara inched toward the feral girl. As they drew near, they saw her hugging her legs and rocking back and forth. She looked up at them and hissed like a cat. Then she leaped up on the bed and shouted, "Little Kitty doesn't know you! Little Kitty doesn't like the smell of you!" "She's worse than Whiskers," Henry whispered to Navara. Then to Stella he said, "It's all right. We're not going to hurt you." Henry reached into his pocket and took out the black gem they had found at the windmill, hoping it was enough. "Stella, can you put this in your mouth? It will help you to get better." "Little Kitty doesn't like it," Stella hissed. "Get away!" "Please, Stella," Navara said in a gentle voice. She drew closer until she could almost touch the girl. "We only want to help." Stella looked from Henry to Navara, growling louder and louder the closer Navara came. Then the elf grabbed her. Stella screamed like an animal and thrashed about, scratching and biting, but Navara held her firm. "Do it, Henry!" Navara cried. Henry gripped Stella's jaw, avoiding her gnashing teeth, and shoved the gem into her mouth. As he spoke the divine words, light flowed from his lips. The light spun like threads of hair, weaving their way to the gem lodged in Stella's mouth. With a flash and a sound like rushing wind, the stone disappeared. Stella ceased thrashing, and her body went limp in Navara's arms. Navara carried her to the bed, and the girl moaned a sigh of relief. "Where am I? What's happened?" Stella asked. "The gem worked." Navara shook the paladin's arm vigorously. "You did it, Henry. You did it." Stella rubbed her head. I remember now. It's all my mother's fault." "Your mother?" Henry asked. "I thought Victor Vallakovich did this to you." "Victor is a stupid, arrogant prat." Stella bunched up the hem of her nightgown. "Yes, it was his magic that turned me into whatever I was. But it was my mother who kept me locked up here. She was the one who forced me into the engagement with Victor in the first place." Stella's voice was hoarse. "It would help our family take over the barony," she'd said. "She used me. Then, when I was ill, she kept me here in this godforsaken room, not bothering to treat my ailment. Even though I knew I was messed up in the head, I could still see right through her. She wanted people to pity me, so they would pity her. She wanted to keep me sick for her own political gain." "But she sent us up here to help you," Navara said. The girl frowned. "Let me guess. Something's happened to Baron Vallakovich. Either that, or she thinks she has enough support to take over the town." Navara and Henry exchanged a look of concern. "She's a clever woman, my mother, but she's not a good person." "Listen, Stella," Henry said. "I know you must have suffered a lot, and I can't imagine what you've been through, but just know that we're here to help. I'm the new sheriff in town, and Navara's my deputy, and we plan to put things right." Stella gave them a blank-faced stare. "That's encouraging," she said. "But I think I can handle my mother.
My issues with her are not your problem."
She stood up and lifted her head high.
"Now, if you don't mind, I need to change and get some sleep. I think I'll use one of my brother's rooms."
She looked back at her own disheveled bed with revulsion, then took Henry's hand.
"Thank you all the same. I'm glad this town has a healer now."
Navara got out her candle and lit the wick. The flame flickered, and Gostomir appeared beside her.
"Hello, Navara," he said with a smile. "Not with your friends tonight?" "Rowan's still awake in our room, so I thought I'd come in here."
Navara sat on a bed in a vacant room of the Blue Water Inn. It was much smaller than the room she shared with her friends, but it was tidy and private.
"We healed a girl today. Well, Henry healed her, but I helped. And I must tell you about the Baron, especially since you didn't show up last night."
"Who? What? Me? Not show?"
"I know you don't want anyone else to see you, but really, it makes me sad when you don't appear. And how can I learn anything? All because you're too shy. Anyway."
Navara told him about the festival, and about her clever trick that sent the Baron running with his tail between his legs.
"Well done, Navara. I knew that phantasmal force spell would come in handy."
Herkomoid nudged Navara, as if to remind her of something else that she needed to tell Gostomir.
"Oh yes, Gostomir. You need to show me how to fly."
She stood up and stretched. The Archfey started flapping his arms and floating upward.
"Just think bird thoughts," he said,
and then vanished through the ceiling. A moment later he floated back down into the room.
"Try doing what I did, but don't hit your head. Obviously you're not incorporeal."
Navara closed her eyes and started flapping her arms.
"Like this? That's good, Navara. Now try singing. Birds like singing, and you have a lovely voice."
Although Gostomir was physically far away, Navara felt the magic bond between herself and her patron transcending the material plane. She tapped into the magic, harnessing it with her mind. She closed her eyes and imagined she was a mother bird flying through the sky, finding grubs for her chicks. Then she started singing an elven ditty. Her crystal necklace grew warm, and her feet lifted off the ground. Her eyes snapped open.
I'm doing it! I'm doing it!"
she said, looking down at the bed. Then, sure enough, she hit her head on the ceiling and fell back down with a thud.
"That was wonderful!"
Gostomir clapped. Navara rubbed her head and smiled, proud of her achievement.
"By the way,"
Gostomir said,
"when are you and your friends going to consecrate those fanes?" "We will, once we've helped Vallaki. First, we need to take care of the Baron."
Herkomoid nudged her again, this time looking annoyed. Navara knew what the dragon had been wanting her to say.
"Also, there's, well, Herkomoid thinks I should tell you I'm seeing someone. A guy."
"That's nice," Gostomir said, waving his arms in different directions and causing his body to flip upside down.
"I have hallucinations all the time." No, not like that. I mean, I'm dating someone."
Gostomir stopped, turned right side up, and blinked his eyes.
"Oh." "I'm dating Vasili. You know, I've told you about him before. The one we plan on making burgomaster."
"Vasili, yes," Gostomir said as flecks of snow began swirling faster around him. Navara clasped her hands together.
"He's really sweet, and I like him. He's going to have a lot of work being the burgomaster, but I think he can do it."
Sure, said Gostomir.
"So, Navara, just keep practicing that spell, and don't flap your arms too quickly or too slowly."
"Like this," Navara said, and she lifted a couple inches off the ground. Uh-huh. Yes, good. But Gostomir wasn't watching her. He was pacing back and forth, looking rather flustered. Navara's feet touched the ground.
Are you all right?
Yes, of course. But his wandering eyes said otherwise. Just keep practicing. I should go for now.
But you only just came.
Yes, well, I have things to do. Before I go, I have a new sentence for you. Tomorrow, you should say, "Remember that guy Vasili? He really smells like poop." Navara gawked.
What? Why would you ask me to say that?
She gave a slight laugh, searching her patron's face for the punchline. That's your sentence for the day, Gostomir said, resolved.
You really... No, I'm not going to say that.
But before Navara could argue further, Gostomir vanished. Navara shook her head, utterly at a loss, and a bit upset.
That was strange, even for Gostomir. Come on, Herkomoid, let's go to bed.
She grabbed her candle and left the room. Henry, or rather the man Henry was in his dream, was performing some kind of surgery on a wounded leg. A two-headed mutant passed him medical instruments as he asked for them. It was an assiduous process, but Henry took his time and worked with steady, skillful hands. Once he had sewn the wound shut with thread, he passed his hand over it. A white glow of healing magic radiated from his fingers until the stitches disappeared and only the faintest scar remained. Henry said in a deep voice, "Thank you for helping me, Cloven. She will be even more perfect than before." He stepped back to admire his handiwork. The patient lying naked on the operating table was a red-haired, powder-skinned woman. Henry had seen her before, and now realized what he had thought strange about her in his previous dream. Her proportions were too perfect, as though she were a doll or a cartoon of the ideal female form. Looking to the other end of the table, he saw her face contorted in agony. She had not been sedated during the operation, only paralyzed by some kind of magic. With another wave of his hand, Henry released her from the spell. The woman curled into a ball, grabbing her legs and wailing uncontrollably. "Me has ouch! Me has ouch!" she said. Henry tried to soothe her. There now, Vasilka. Your pain and beauty will purge away the sins of many." Then Henry woke up. Henry donned his armor and pushed the grisly visions of his dream into the recesses of his tired mind, focusing instead on the day at hand. Today was the last day Baron Vargas Vallakovich would be burgomaster. Once fully dressed, Henry marched down to the tap-room and walked up to Erwin and Elvir, who were standing behind the bar. The brothers stopped whispering to each other when they saw Henry approach. "How are things going with that late wine shipment?" Henry asked. Elvir gave Erwin a look, as though it was the very thing they were discussing, but the elder Martikov hesitated. "We fear something bad has happened at the winery," Elvir said. "I'm sorry to hear that," said Henry. "I wanted to thank you again, Elvir, for helping us at the coffin shop. If there's anything I can do to help you—" The brothers exchanged glances, and Elvir gave Erwin a decided nod. "Listen, Henry, I don't trust many people," Erwin said. "But I've seen you stand up to the Baron and Isaac, and I've heard about you taking out that nest of vampires. This town needs people like you and your friends. As for me, I was wondering if you could go with Elvir to check on the winery, see what's going on there. The vineyard, the Wizard of Wines, is run by our father.
Elvir has travelled that road many times, but our family has enemies, and I fear what might await him there."
"Of course I'll help," Henry said. "Let me talk it over with the others, but I would be more than willing to go."
"Let us know as soon as you're able to travel," Elvir said.
Henry was about to leave, then remembered one of his ideas for protecting the town. "Do either of you know another priest in the valley?"
"There's an abbot at the Abbey of St. Markovia," Elvir said.
"Where's that?"
"In Kresik, a town north of the winery."
"Kresik." Henry nodded slowly. "That's good to know. I hope I can get to this abbot before he dies. That seems to be the pattern with priests around here." Henry went to the stables. It had been a few days since Snowflake had been groomed or exercised, but at least the stable hands were taking him out to graze daily. "Hey there, boy," he said, patting the dappled stallion. Snowflake sniffed him with a gray muzzle, looking for a treat. Henry gave him a carrot. Then he grabbed a curry from the tack room and began rubbing the horse down. "Don't you need to talk with the Baron?" Henry's heart jumped, but he continued brushing as though he hadn't been surprised. "You know, you have this uncanny ability to sneak up on people, even when you're not a cat." Rowan gave a slight smile. Henry curried in a circular motion, getting rid of the dried mud from Snowflake's coat. The horse had a habit of rolling. "As for the burgomaster," he said, "I'll see him this morning. What are you up to?" "Wondering how many of these birds are were-ravens," Rowan said quietly, looking up at the rafters. "Elvir hasn't told us much about them." "Speaking of Elvir," Henry said, changing from a curry to a thick bristled brush, "he wants us to go with him to the Wizard of Wines. It's his family's business, and they think something's gone wrong." "In that case, we should talk to Navara and Irina." Henry nodded in agreement. There was a long pause. "Do you need any help?" Rowan asked. "I think Juniper does." Henry handed Rowan the curry, and she began brushing Navara's horse. "To be honest," Rowan said, "I'll be glad to leave this town." "Aren't you curious about being, buried here?" "I'm 87 years old. I don't remember ever living here, and I haven't seen many elderly people in Vallaki, so I doubt anyone would remember me or my mother." 87. Elves age slower than humans. About 5 times slower until maturity, I think. Henry paused, doing the math in his head. "So does that mean you're like a 17-year-old human?" "Something like that," Rowan said, brushing Juniper. "By elven standards, I'm barely an adult." "But still, there's got to be someone around here who remembers your family. Maybe other elves. They would be old enough." "Even if there was, I wouldn't trust them. Trust is what got my mother killed." The coldness of Rowan's words sent a shiver down Henry's spine. He stopped and put his brush down. "You know you can talk to us, right? Me, Navara, Irina. We're here for you. I'm here for you. Even if that white wolf scared my horse shitless." "Henry, I'm just saying." Henry grinned inwardly, seeing Rowan roll her eyes, but smile at the same time. "Seriously, you can tell me if you need someone to talk to." "Thanks," she said, "but I don't want any of you burdened with my demons."
"Whiskers, we've all got shit weighing us down. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes you have to unload it, and that's what friends are for."
The elf swallowed. "In that case, you should know something." "Vampire!"
Navara asked, when the four of them were in the sanctuary of their room. Rowan had confessed more of her dreams to Henry at the barn, and then to all of them when they were together again.
"Who's vampire?"
Navara asked.
"Not Strahd, I'm guessing, since you said this vampire told you that you'd be more powerful than Strahd."
"Let's talk about it later," Rowan said, watching the window. "I vote that we leave Vallaki as soon as we can." After Henry told them about the winery and the Martikovs' concerns, it was decided they should leave with Elvir as soon as Vasili became the new burgomaster. "I'd like to go to Kresik after that," Henry said, tracing his fingers over the sun on his sword's hilt. Remembering Isaac, the vampires, the stolen bones, and the death of Father Lucian, Henry had come to realize that Irina was not safe in Vallaki. "There's an abbot in Kresik who could help us figure out how to protect Vallaki. Since we never found St. Andrew's bones, we could take Father Lucian's body to this abbey and ask to have it consecrated or something."
"I don't think that's how it works," Irina said. "Relics are holy because the saints themselves are holy. It's the Morning Lord who makes them so, not us. We can't consecrate them as though we were making holy water. There's no ritual for it. But Vallaki does need a new priest. Maybe we could bring someone from Vallaki to train as a priest under the abbot."
Henry was embarrassed that he, a paladin, trained at the houses of Merlin, knew less about theology than a girl from Barovia. But he liked the idea of finding a new priest for Vallaki. "What about that boy Melvin?" he said.
"You mean Milivaj?"
suggested Irina. "Yeah, him." Irina frowned.
"You want Milivaj to train as a priest? Wasn't he the teenager who betrayed the church and told Henrik where St. Andrew's bones were hidden?"
"He was," Henry said. "But this could be a way for Milivaj to redeem himself. After all, he's an orphan, and only did what he did to get money to feed his younger siblings. But we'll have to ask him first."
"Training him will take time," Irina said, "even if he is willing."
Navara raised her hand, like a schoolgirl waiting to be called on by the teacher. "Yes, Navara?" Henry gave a half grin and shook his head at the warlock's waggishness.
"I understand the urgency of going to the winery." She put her hand down. "And I can see why we might want to go to Kresik, so we can help Vallaki with a priest or something like that. But we also need to find the Fanes."
"I agree," Rowan said.
"Henry, you need to consecrate the one at the windmill." "And then we'll need to find the others," Navara said. "Maybe the abbot will know where they are," Irina suggested.
"Possibly," Henry said. "You all can keep talking about it, but I need to get going. Sheriff duty."
"I'm coming with you,"
Irina said, fastening her sword belt around her waist. "By the way, Navara," Henry said, "the Baron put out a warrant for your arrest." He shrugged his shoulders. "I just haven't gotten around to arresting you yet." The Vallakovich mansion was in chaos when Henry and Irina arrived. On the outside there was a crowd of people protesting at the gate, and when Henry entered the house, the Baron was yelling at his wife.
"Get a hold of yourself, woman,"
the Baron said.
"But the people, Vargas,"
Lady Petrovna said with tears in her eyes.
"Shut it, Lydia. If you cannot contain your emotions, then just leave. I'll handle this."
Lady Petrovna turned and left, running up the stairs, her cries carrying through the house. Upon seeing Henry, the Baron addressed him.
"Henry, my sheriff."
The Baron showed none of his timidity from the day before, but he had a crazed look in his eye, and he moved about gathering papers on his desk with frantic anxiety.
"I need that riot outside gone, and that deputy. That cursed deputy is in league with the Devil Strahd. Have you arrested her yet? You need to. She needs to be hanged."
When he saw Irina and the sword at her side, he asked Henry,
"Is that one trustworthy?"
"I trust her with my life," Henry said. The Baron addressed her without looking her in the eyes.
"Young lady, how would you like to be a deputy of Vallaki?"
"I thought you didn't have enough money to pay me," she said. The Baron wrung his hands.
"That position and salary have since opened up."
A small rock hit the window with a clink. It wasn't enough to break the glass, but it was enough to shatter the Baron's nerves.
"Blast those wretches! Curses be upon them!"
He drew the curtains in the parlor room and looked at Henry with a twitching left eye.
"They're demanding that I resign. To think that they would dare threaten me! No, Henry, I want all those people rounded up and thrown in the stocks. I don't care what methods you use. In fact, make sure to crack a few heads while you're at it."
The Baron walked in ever-tightening circles until he looked like a spinning top. "Baron Vallakovich," Henry said, wanting to get to the point and holding in his own frustrations. "How about we hold a festival tomorrow to make up for the one yesterday? There we can publicly denounce everyone who has brought unhappiness to Vallaki. We need to punish the troublemakers, deal with those who pose a threat to the public welfare."
"Yes, yes, we will punish all the offenders."
The Baron drove a fist into the palm of his hand.
"We will beat them until they're happy, or kill them if we must."
After finalizing plans for the new festival, which the Baron ate up enthusiastically, Henry and Irina spent the rest of the day talking with the guards and dispersing the protesters. Henry warned the guards about what to expect at the upcoming festival. They seemed indifferent and agreed not to interfere. As for the protesters, Henry took care not to lay a hand on anyone, promising them their grievances would be heard if they came to the festival tomorrow. Henry and Irina were walking back to the inn that evening, when Irina took Henry's hand and led him to the stables. His heart started beating faster when the two of them were alone. She lit a lantern, and Henry cleared his throat. Irina, there might be were-ravens watching. I don't know if we should—" Irina gave him a wry smile. "Keep your shirt on, Gibson. I just think we need some time to practice." She unsheathed her sword. "If I'm going to be a deputy around here, I need to sharpen my skills." "On guard," Henry said, drawing his own sword. Irina raised her weapon in both hands. "All right, now defend yourself." He stepped forward and delivered a cut. The two blades met with a clang as Irina parried the blow. "That's good. You want to step in exactly like that to meet my attack, the strong of your blade against the weak of mine. But don't overextend yourself. Keep your elbows in tight, and keep your eyes on my chest. You don't have to look at my sword to know where it is. Feel the bind when our blades touch. Okay, let's try it again." They repeated the drill several more times, until Henry was satisfied with Irina's form. Then they tried stringing along a series of parries and ripostes. They kept this up for over an hour, back and forth across the clay floor of the stable, with curious horses watching from their stalls, until Henry noticed that Irina was breathing heavily. "I think that's enough for now." The knight sank onto a hay bale, and his student collapsed next to him. "That was fantastic," Irina said. "Did you learn all that in the army?" "Yep. After 6 years, I hope I learned something." Irina propped herself up on an elbow.
What was that like, being in the army? I love hearing stories about life outside Barovia.
They talked late into the night, and Henry forgot about being trapped in the mists. He forgot about the Baron. He forgot about Strahd. Right now there was no place he would rather be than sitting on that hay bale in that stable. Finally, when they had lost all track of time, the lantern snuffed out. "It's out of oil," Henry said. He started to stand up, but stopped when a gentle hand pressed on his chest. Irina's voice whispered in the dark,
"I don't have to look at you to know where you are."
Then Henry felt her warm head rest on his shoulder. Navara ate a slice of buttered bread, resting her head on Vasili's shoulder.
"Are you finished?"
she asked, looking at the paper he was writing on. The daylight had already disappeared, and now a few stars twinkled in through Vasili's apartment windows.
"Almost there."
He jotted a few more notes, then set down his quill.
"Can I read it to you?"
"Go ahead," Navara said, who had been waiting all afternoon for him to finish.
"I'm honored to be the first person to hear your inaugural speech."
Vasili stood up and read with a confident but humble air.
"People of Vallaki, my brothers and sisters, it is not without trepidation that I accept the title of burgomaster today. It is an illustrious title, descending from the time of Boris Vallakovich down to our own day. But it is also a heavy responsibility, and the weight of this responsibility proved too much for its previous holder, Baron Vargas Vallakovich. I will not bore you, as he did, by enumerating a long list of his crimes against the people. We can all attest to his cruelty. Furthermore, after witnessing the attack on the coffin shop, we can definitively say that his many obnoxious festivals accomplished nothing. My friends, I cannot promise you that all will be well. We know there are real evils that haunt our town, and plastering smiles on our faces will do nothing to change them. But neither shall we give in to despair. Curses can be made, and curses can be broken. Let us not grow weary of striving to break Barovia's curse. It is Barovia's curse. Our fate is bound up with the fate of the entire valley, and we can no longer ignore the good folk outside our walls. The Vistani are not all spies. The Druids are not all witches. Even Count Strahd is not purely evil. We are, all of us, victims of Barovia. And until the curse can be broken, we must learn to live with each other. I earnestly believe that, if we work together, Vallaki can become a beacon of hope in this dark land."
Vasili bowed, and Navara clapped.
"Well done," she said. "It's very good. But what's with that part you said about Strahd? You made it sound like he wasn't so bad. Strahd's evil. All evil. I think you should take out that part about him."
"But Navara, it's like Lady Voctor said. If I'm going to be the burgomaster, I don't want to anger the Lord of Barovia."
"I suppose," Navara said. "But listen, don't let Lady Voctor push you around. She's a forceful person and wants to use you. You'll stand up to her, won't you?"
"Sure I will." Navara held his hand.
"Just be careful. I saw that she has a crystal amulet, which means she's probably a spellcaster. And she has her own servants. I saw one of them with a crossbow. And Henry, Irina, Rowan and I are leaving Vallaki tomorrow to help someone. We'll be gone for a few days or more. You won't have us to protect you and—"
Vasili put a hand on Navara's lips.
"Don't worry, Navara. I can do this. Bravery is more than magic and a strong sword arm."
Then he sat down beside her, and Navarra relaxed, melting into his embrace. The next day was the festival. It was cold and overcast, and the sky rumbled. There was electricity in the air, but not just from the clouds above. When the Baron and Henry walked up to the podium, Henry saw the red faces and clenched fists of the seething crowd before him. Oblivious to the mood of the people, the Baron began his speech.
Hear ye, he said. It is time we put an end to the malefactors and the contagious melancholy that plagues our town, starting with the treasonous deputy, Miss Navarra. This woman wheedled her way into her position using lies and deceit. She is, in fact, a spy for none other than the devil Strahd.
But she helped save the town,
someone from the back of the crowd shouted.
That's right, said another person. She killed vampires at the coffin shop.
The Baron's eye twitched, and his lips went thin as he spoke.
It was all a pretense. She is in league with the devil. She's a traitor.
The crowd collectively let out disapproving cries and shook their heads. "What do we do with traitors, Baron?" Henry asked.
"We execute them," the Baron let out. "They will die by the sword."
"I am no traitor."
Navarra stood up on a bench in the middle of the multitude. Her red hair made her stand out among the shades of grey.
"There she is," the Baron said. "Guards, arrest her!"
But the guards did not move.
"I have only ever served the good people of this town," Navarra said. "Not by forcing them to smile, not by threatening them with the stocks, and especially not by making them come to these pointless festivals."
The people raised their voices in accord with Navarra's words. Then someone yelled,
"It's the Baron's fault! He's the reason we're miserable!"
"He doesn't care about us," said another.
"He let the vampires into our town," said an angry man.
"Down with the Baron,"
said a blonde-haired woman at the front.
"Down with tyranny."
The crowd, devouring each other's words, echoed a chant in a crescendo of cries. "Down with the Baron! Down with the Baron!"
"Henry, do something!"
the Baron stammered. Henry looked out into the frenzied crowd and saw Lady Wachter standing quietly, smiling. Then he stepped forward and raised his arms as though to calm the crowd. "Please, good people, consider what you are doing. Think of what would happen if you turned against this good burgomaster. There would be no more smiles. There would be no more festivals. If you should turn into a mob and kill the burgomaster right here and now, think how your lives might change." A townsman jumped onto the podium.
"Who has an axe?"
the man addressed the throng. About 10 people from the crowd raised their axes in offering. In a flash, a small mob scaled the podium and seized the Baron.
"You can't do this to me! I'm a noble!"
The Baron resisted, but he could not flee this time. The mob pushed the Baron to his knees.
"We, the people of Vallaki," said the first man, "sentence you, Baron Vallakovich, to death." "Off with his head!" the crowd shouted.
And, with the wave of an axe, the Baron's head rolled. The crowd cheered, and in the joyous whirl, Vasili took to the stage and offered his speech. His words rang like the bells of freedom, and when Henry introduced him as the new burgomaster, not a single frown was to be seen. In his death, Vargas Vallakovich had finally brought the people happiness.